All right, live. What is up, my friends? Good afternoon. My name is Robert Dempsey, robertwdempsey.com, and welcome to my live online workshop about transforming your life with the three principles. I know, bold statement, but that is what I'm going to be talking about today. So, got my outline as normal here. So first, just a quick introduction. Okay, I'm Robert Dempsey. I just said that. My website is robertwdempsey.com. And so who am I? I am a transformational coach. And what that means is that I help people change their lives. Literally, I work with people who are in a certain place, a certain time of their life, and they want to turn that around completely 180 degrees. And I help them do that through coaching, 6 to 12 months, and bring to bear all of the knowledge and experience that I have over the past 20 years of all the things that I've been into to help lead those lead those conversations and help people make those changes. And there's a couple ways of working with me. The main one is one-on-one, and also I do some group activities as well. So that's me in a nutshell. And so let's get to the conversation that we're going to have today, which is about the three principles. And what exactly are the three principles? So the three principles are a way of talking about or explaining really the human condition that I got turned on to via a book that was suggested to me by my coach called One Thought Changes Everything by Mara Gleason. And so the three principles were first articulated by a gentleman named Sydney Banks, who was a ninth grade educated welder who was born in Scotland. He lived in British Columbia, Canada in the early 1970s. So basically a way of explaining the human condition really discovered by someone not even in that space, and a welder from Scotland. So pretty cool stuff. So what are the three principles? Well, obviously there's three. The first is mind, the second is consciousness, and then the third is thought. And an analogy that I've seen used quite often to describe this is, if you think of a movie projector, and the movie projector is plugged into the wall, so the wall is its energy source, that is mind. That is energy. So mind is the energy and intelligence of all life, whether it is in form, so like us, right? Like we're powered obviously by energy, all of our electronics, all the stuff that you're using to see me today. So that is form, energy that has a form. But then you also have energy that is formless. Also within the mind kind of category, you have this idea of a universal mind, or something impersonal that's constant and unchangeable. So some people might call this source, some people might call it God, the universe, universal mind, but it's something that is impersonal, it's constant, and it is unchangeable. And then you have the flip side of that, though, which is the personal mind, which is the minds that you and I have, which is in a perpetual state of change. And, we know this because we live lives and we evolve over time. Our thoughts, our beliefs change over time, right? So our personal mind is in this perpetual state of change, but source, like the original of the universal energy, is constant, and that is actually unchangeable. So that's part one, that's mind. The second part is consciousness. So in the analogy of the movie projector, you have the power source, which is mind or energy, and then the film itself and the projector are thoughts, and then those thoughts are projected onto consciousness. And consciousness, as you may have already guessed or you may already know, is really this gift that we humans have of awareness. It is, and this awareness, really what it does is it allows recognition of form, and then form really just being an expression of thought. So consciousness is awareness of things, specifically awareness of our thoughts. And then finally, we have thought. So thought is seen as a divine gift, which serves us immediately after we're born. And thought is what we use, it's the creative agent that we use to direct us through life. And again, in the analogy of the movie projector, so we have mind is our energy source, right? Universe, God, source, whatever you want to call that, is the universal energy, which basically physics has proven that there is literally everything's energy. So you have that. So you have our power source, which is energy. You then have thoughts, which are the film and the projector. And then you have the light, the energy source shining through those thoughts, projecting thought onto consciousness, which then makes us aware of our thoughts. And, sometimes actually, and now that I think about it, so some of our thoughts we might be completely aware of. Some thoughts are in our subconscious, but we do have tools and techniques to be able to bring those even subconscious thoughts up into our active consciousness and to really figure out what's going on and to change it. So one of the cool things about this whole analogy is, or about this whole thing, the idea of these three principles is that neuroscience is proving all of this to be true. So science is catching up with basically spiritual principles that like Buddhists have known for thousands of years, that humans have known for thousands of years. Particularly, there was a great TED talk that I want to turn you on to by Lisa Feldman Barrett. She's a PhD and a neuroscientist. And she has a talk titled, "You Aren't at the Mercy of Your Emotions, Your Brain Creates Them." And so she said that neuroscience has shown that literally the thoughts that we think generate emotions. So we don't just have emotions. They aren't just like sitting there waiting to be activated. Like you can push a button and then all of a sudden, bink, like a light switch, like, oh, hey, let me flip the happy switch or the sad switch or whatever. It's the thoughts and our perception of those thoughts, the consciousness of those thoughts that then actually creates emotion. So that's a really fantastic TED Talk that I want to turn you on to. And I link to it in my blog post where this recording will be saved. So 3 principles: mind, consciousness, thought. Neuroscience showing us that the emotions that we have are generated from the thoughts that we have. And the big thing that really struck me with this, when combining the 3 principles with the concepts from neuroscience, is that what it means is that if we can change our thoughts, we can change the way that we feel. Now, you may have read this, but it is in fact true because, again, our thoughts determine our emotions. Now, taking it to the level of spirituality, our emotions are what really guide us. This is something that I learned a long time ago in marketing, where people, or in advertising, marketing, all that. So, we will have an emotional response to something, and whether or not we know it, we have had the thought. That thought could be a nanosecond. At nanosecond speed, we have a thought, and immediately we go into an emotion. So what advertisers and what marketers do is try and speak not to the conscious part of our brain, which is thinking, the logical part of our brain. They go straight for the emotions. And a lot of time we as humans will have an emotional response and then back it up with logic. Right? So really, the reality of the situation here that you and I find ourselves in is that our emotions are actually what do guide us. And what's really cool, though, is that we can use our emotions to tell us whether or not what we're thinking about is in alignment with our higher self. And so that starts going into another rabbit hole of spirituality and whatnot. But going back to the idea that our emotions are really what guides us. So each of us has what's called an emotional guidance system. And we can use these emotional guidance systems to tell if our thoughts are really in alignment, again, with that higher self or not. So this assumes, though, that you actually believe there is a higher self. And it's not just, we people, like, yes, there's definitely us humans, right, running around, but there's some connection that we have, back to source, back to God, some higher self that is kind of projecting into us that we have a connection with. And so for some people to take it out of what some might think of as like really woo-woo kind of stuff and bringing it even closer to earth for you, intuition. Right? Where does intuition come from? That little voice inside of you that you have that says, hey, let's say you're about to make a choice and you have this gut reaction where you feel a strong emotion. Okay, I should do that, or I really shouldn't do that, right? That bit of inspiration is that connection to your higher self. That is your emotional guidance system saying, hey, yeah, you should do this, or no, you shouldn't do this. Now, the fun part of all this, though, is that once we have this initial gut reaction, this inspiration, our emotional guidance system comes up and says, hey, this is really the way that you should go about doing this. Then, though, our brain can start kicking in and just come up with all sorts of reasons why we should or should not actually do something. And something that I've read that really helped me was that the more reasons that you have for why you should do something, that really is an indicator that you probably shouldn't actually be doing that thing whatsoever. So if you have to come up with basically reason after reason after reason to do something, then that thing is probably completely out of line or out of alignment with your higher self and your instinct. Your instinct is telling you, hey, don't go and do that. And then your brain says, oh, well, here's a bunch of stuff why. As an example, a personal example, I created a group coaching program called Exit Neutral. I hired a copywriter. She wrote all of my copy. We created advertisement. We had images, the whole 9 yards for everything. I was ready to launch it. And then something, though, in my head was like holding me back. Now, mind you, I had come up with this idea in the first place out of inspiration. I was inspired because I wanted to help people. I wanted to create a setting that maybe, people aren't ready for a one-on-one coaching relationship. Maybe they'd feel better if they were part of a group, kind of going through a process together. So I said, okay, what I do is I create safe spaces of honesty, of confidentiality, of non-judgment for people. And so let me do that for a group of people. And so I got literally everything in place, all ready to go, but then something was stopping me. And that something that was stopping me was my head. And when I started working with my coach, what she told me, which was really profound, makes complete sense in retrospect, was, when you're about to do something and possibly something big, then your head will literally start generating all sorts of reasons for you to not actually do that thing, because your subconscious, or what some people term the lizard brain, is programmed to keep you comfortable. And what is comfort? Comfort is not doing that thing, not taking that risk, not going out and doing that interview or talking to that person or taking that next step in your business, right? Comfort is staying exactly where you are. And you can do that, right? You can absolutely do that. That is definitely a choice. You could choose to do nothing and live into what Rich Litvin calls your default future, which is, given that nothing changes in your life, this is the default future that you're heading into. This is where you're going to go, which is effectively more of the same, right? So understanding and bringing all of that back to the three principles is, when that occurs, right? When we have that emotional response that is saying, hey, go and do this thing, or hey, don't go and do this thing. And that is powerful. But then our head starts generating thoughts which are just things, to not do that thing. Then we can say, okay, I understand, right? Like, I have this energy inside me, this lizard brain trying to keep me safe, trying to keep me comfortable, trying to keep me right where I am. And I acknowledge that. But, these thoughts are just thoughts. All of this, what if? Those are just thoughts. Like, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this other thing happens? Like, who the hell knows, really? Like, honestly, like, that's stuff that just keeps us stuck where we are. And that's not really where we want to go. So if we can acknowledge that those are just thoughts, and those thoughts really don't hold any power, those thoughts will just kind of flow through, like Jim Carrey says, right? It's like thoughts are like clouds in the sky. They come and then they go, and then they keep coming and they keep going. Right? So we cannot grab onto those thoughts. We cannot give our energy to those thoughts. And instead, we can give our energy to completely different thoughts. So I hope honestly, I hope I'm making some sense whatsoever here. But for me, the three principles of energy, thought, and consciousness, and understanding that we do have an inner emotional guidance system that is guiding us where to go. And also understanding that emotions are generated from thoughts. And then combining that with the spirituality that says, your emotional guidance system is your connection to your higher self, right? So I think a thought, I feel an emotion that's generated because of that thought. That emotion is my inner being, my higher self, telling me whether or not that thought is really in alignment with what my higher self really thinks I should be doing. And what's cool is that, okay, yeah, like for a long time, me saying that would almost sound kind of woo-woo. But the thing is that neuroscience, folks like Lisa Feldman, PhD, psychologist, top mind out there, is proving this to be true. And it's very awesome. And that is to me very empowering. And so again, like making it personal. And speaking of thoughts, and thoughts is just things, but the power that thoughts can have. For a long time, I thought that as a man, I had to be strong no matter what happened. I had to be able to handle everything that came my way in life. I had to be able to stand on my own 2 feet. I had to be able to completely be in control of my emotions at any given time of the day. And I had to be able to deal with all of that stuff myself. Right? That's a thought. My dad didn't tell me that. No one specifically said that. Somehow, that thought got generated through a combination of our society, our culture, the culture that we live in here in America, came from the media, what I was seeing on TV, the people that were around me, all of that. And I bought into that thought, and I gave that thought a lot of power. But the issue for me with that one thought, and again, to exemplify really the power that a single thought can have, that thought, and really my inability to actually deal with all of that stuff and to not deal with any of that stuff, never deal with any of the emotional stuff, just stuff it down. It was literally more than I could really handle. And because it was more than I could handle, I looked for an outlet. For me, that outlet was drugs and alcohol. For other people, it's food. For some people, it's sex or gambling, right? Name your vice. It could be anything. Some people, freak out, they blow up and they hurt others, and then they hurt themselves. Maybe they hurt themselves, maybe they don't. Right? So at least for me, on the spectrum of bad things that could happen to you because of a very powerful thought of that nature, I see that, I was actually pretty lucky in the whole grand scheme of things that one thought didn't in fact kill me, because it almost did. That one thought led me to being a blackout drinker for 1.5 years. Very rough situation, losing literally everything that I'd ever wanted in my life. But the good news is that it was also another thought that actually turned everything around. So one morning I woke up, I was at culinary school, didn't know how I had gotten into my bed. I was drenched in sweat again, reeking of alcohol. It was not a beautiful, not a pretty situation at all. And I woke up this day and I had a different thought. And the thought was that if I was able to buy my own alcohol, I was 20 at the time, had been a blackout drinker for 1.5 years. So what's that tell you? But if I was able to buy my own alcohol, I was literally going to kill myself with alcohol. And that thought completely changed my life. And the thoughts also that came after that, and the thoughts that I gave power to, have gotten me into a much better place where I've achieved a lot, and I am now really following my true passions and going after what it is that I really want. Because wanting, yes, on some level is selfish, but wanting doesn't mean that just because I want something, you can't have what you want. I believe I come from a place of abundance, a mindset of abundance where I can have what I want and you can have what you want. And so can everyone else. right? Because we all want different things. And maybe we do all want the same kind of thing, but there's a lot of things out there for us to have. Again, thoughts that we can choose to give our energy to. We can choose to give our energy to thoughts that work for us, or we can choose to give energy to thoughts that don't work for us. Are we moving towards what we want, or are we moving towards what it is we don't want? Are you living from the past, or are you living in the present, being conscious of what's going on and living into your future? Right? It is literally a choice that we can make, which is really cool, and I think, for me at least, something that's very empowering. Now, here's the fun part, though, is that trying to control our thoughts is a losing battle. Neuroscience has also shown this to be true, where we cannot, like, have you ever sat down and tried to, just sat and thought to yourself, okay, stop thinking, stop thinking, stop thinking. Or it's like, you may have heard this one where someone says, okay, try not to think about a pink elephant. And as soon as someone says, try not to think about whatever it is, a pink elephant, then immediately you think of a pink elephant, right? Like, you can't control that. The thoughts just occur. They're going to happen no matter what. And unless you're like a level 90 monk in real life, controlling these thoughts is a very difficult thing. So instead, let's do something that's a heck of a lot easier. And that is reaching for a better feeling thought. So if you find yourself in the day, let's say you just check in with yourself, right? Because a lot of times we'll go through the day, we'll be thinking things, all sorts of crazy stuff sometimes, right? But we'll be thinking things, we'll be feeling our emotions, we'll be going through life generally. And this is where the consciousness comes in, and mindfulness from Buddhism comes in, where we can actually, take a step back, sit down, take a few deep breaths, check in with yourself. Okay, how am I feeling? What thoughts are going through my head? Okay, how am I feeling because of those thoughts? Am I moving towards what I want, or am I moving towards what I don't want? And if you have like some really like very powerful unwanted thought, so it might be you're very angry about something, you're very sad about something, anything that's moving you towards what you don't want, instead of trying to completely reverse your situation right then and there, so basically going from like super freaking angry to like everything is unicorns and rainbows, right? Like, that's a very wide spectrum. Like, that's a bit difficult, right? That is a bit hard to get to from where you are. So instead, reach for just something that makes you feel a little better, and then a little better, and then a little better, and a little better. And then ultimately, with all these little small kind of baby steps, right, you will then start feeling a lot better. Sometimes you have to take a step back. You have to get out of the situation to be able to do that. Deep breathing tends to help quite a bit to help you focus, to be able to tune into your body and know what exactly is going on inside, to become consciously aware of the thoughts that are going through your head and your emotional response to them. And then from there, you can get back to where it is that you want to be. So, talked a lot so far, right? 3 principles: mind, consciousness, thought. We talked about neuroscience really proving this to be true. Talked about Lisa Feldman Barrett, a PhD neuroscientist who had a great TED Talk. You aren't at the mercy of your emotions. Your brain creates them. Took it down to spirituality, where we all have an emotional guidance system, which is telling us, hey, is that thought moving us towards what we want or what we don't want, right? That is our connection with our higher self, our inner being, our connection to source. However you want to define that for yourself, totally cool, right? But basically, it is the guidance system that helps you know. Some people call it intuition. Some people call it inspiration, that gut feeling. But it is that feeling in the moment that you get that is like, yes, I should go this way, or no, I should not go that way, right? Like, I'm moving towards what I want. I'm moving towards what I don't want. So we have that. Also touched on the fact that, especially in the American culture, for men, we're taught to, by society, really, not necessarily by our fathers or mothers or anybody, but that we should actually suppress that. We should not listen to that. That we have to question our emotional guidance system, which for me led me way off the deep end into drugs and alcohol. Leads some people into depression, huge anxiety, hurting themselves and other people. Right, like the power that we can give these thoughts can really mess us up because we disconnect ourselves from this emotional guidance system. And then we talked about how trying to control our thoughts is a losing battle. And instead, we reach for something not completely on the other end of the spectrum where we are. So if we're super angry, we don't try and jump from super angry to super happy all of a sudden, because most likely that's not going to work. It's going to be extremely difficult. Then you're just going to get more pissed off, frankly. I know at least that's how it's been for me. So instead, we reach for something just a little bit better, just a little bit better, just a little bit better. And we keep putting our energy into that thought, that happier thought, that slightly happier thought, more and more and more, until ultimately we move back across the spectrum to being back in, moving in the direction to where it is or what it is that we want. So some practical application for you, really we have three choices. We can either live in the present moment. So right here, right now, what am I doing right now? Being fully invested in it. Some people call that the flow state of being just completely focused on the present moment, what you're doing right now. We can live into the future, which is, I know where I want to be in 6 to 12 months. Don't know how I'm going to get there, but that's okay because I know exactly where I would like to be 6 to 12 months from now. And I'm just going to keep taking the next action to get to that future self. Or we can live from the past, literally live from the past. So Rich Litvin, who is a coach that I listen to and I've learned quite a bit from, and he wrote a great book called The Prosperous Coach. He talks about this default future that we all have, which is, again, given that nothing in our lives changes, literally nothing changes, no thoughts, no nothing changes, then we are living into this default future, which is effectively more of exactly the same as we have now. And what we have now is because of what we've done in the past. And so if we are constantly living from this standpoint of the past and we're living into a default future, which is effectively more of the past, then we are really living, we're literally like living in our past. And that is something that is definitely, definitely not awesome. And it's where a lot of people really are, unfortunately. However, the good news is that we can choose. We can choose to live into a completely brand new future, and it is a future that you can actually create for yourself. Now, I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, well, yes. Yeah, so all of a sudden, I create my future vision, 6 to 12 months. It's all unicorns and rainbows, right? It's not that. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. It takes work, right? It took a lot of work for me to recover from alcoholism. It took me a lot of work to get to where I am today. It takes people just a lot of work to be able to gain mindfulness into taking a step back. What am I thinking about? How am I feeling because of that? And then reaching for a slightly better thought, right? That takes work to do. Now, it's not necessarily always difficult. It absolutely gets better over time. But that is also where having support comes into play. A coach, a mentor, somebody, right? Like solid friends that aren't just buying into your crap, but in the stories that you're telling yourself and you're telling them, but someone to really help you out and be there as support to help you identify those stories and turn those stories around so that you can actually live into a future that you create. And the great thing is, though, too, is that what I found is that when you look at where you want to be 6 to 12 months from now, you do not necessarily have to know exactly how you're going to get there. In fact, you probably don't. You might want to be in some place so wildly different 12 months from now that really you're just like, I have no effing idea, like how in the hell I am going to get there. And the good news is that, well, there's some techniques that you can do for that. Maybe you're reaching way too far. So you need to dial it back just a little bit. Now, I'm not saying drop the dreams that you have, but it might be, okay, due to my circumstances, if this feels like way too much for me to live into within a year, let me just dial it back a little bit. Maybe some things don't seem big enough and you got to dial that stuff up, like turn it up to 11. So there's techniques of like where we can adjust kind of that future vision based on whether it seems just like way too much based on the circumstances and overwhelming or really not enough. So you can then add to it. So creating this future vision for you and then having someone to support you along the way, huge bonus. And again, That person could be a good friend that's going to call you out on your BS, could be a coach, could be a mentor, could be somebody. Probably not best to have it be like your spouse, significant other, or your parents, because they have, they have reasons to like tell you things one way or another. So I find an objective third party awesome. So those are the three choices: live in the present moment, live into the future, or live from the past. Absolutely a choice. And there's ways of going about that you and I can use every day. It's great. So also with that, there's this spectrum, and I've already talked quite a bit about this so far, the spectrum of what's wanted and what's not wanted. So we are either thinking thoughts at any given point in the day, thoughts of either what we want or thoughts of what we don't want. And the issue with thinking about stuff that we don't want is that what that is really saying is that I am lacking some experience in my life. So it could be I'm lacking the experience of a job that I love, or I'm lacking the experience of an abundance of money that gives me the opportunities that I want. It could be I'm lacking the experience of really doing what makes me happy, like every day of my life, waking up excited, refreshed, all that, right? And so when we come from that standpoint and we give power to those thoughts of what we don't want, the danger is that more of that will actually will come into our lives. Now, on the other side, though, is that if we focus on what it is we do want, then that is more of a view of abundance. So it's an abundance of experiences in my life, right? It's all these things I want. I want to travel with my family. I want to live in a really nice house. I want to, for me, like I want to talk to people for a living. Like that's literally what I want. I feel no shame in saying that whatsoever. I think it's pretty awesome. So that would be great, right? Like talk to people for a living for me. Some people, it's like, I just want to write software. Awesome. I want to be a forest ranger. I want to do this. Like fantastic, right? So when we focus on what it is we want, then we'll attract more of that into our life too. So some people might say, law of attraction. In fact, that is law of attraction, which says like attracts like. So again, taking it from what might seem like some spiritual woo-woo stuff down to real practical application, though, think of it like this. A really good analogy actually is that, if you are going about your day and you are generally speaking a happy person, are you surrounded by people that are like just hating life, or have you really surrounded with yourself by happy people? Another thing is that, when the analogy of purchasing a car. So if you buy a certain type of car, then all of a sudden, everywhere you go, you will notice more of that particular type of car, because that particular type of car is now within your awareness. And so that is why I say that it is very important to focus on what it is you want instead of what it is you don't want. Because, for instance, like if you want that car and you want to see kind of more cars like that, right? Like that's what's going to come into your consciousness is more stuff like that. So if you are thinking about, oh, I hate my job, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this, then that is literally all that you're going to see of like, it's just you not having that thing. You will attract other people. The adage, God, I don't even know how old this is. I should look it up. That misery loves company, right? Misery does love company. So you get a bunch of people that get together and they're all like, oh, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me. They've attracted each other because of their basically those thoughts, right? So it is very dangerous for us, for you and I, to think about stuff that we don't want. Instead, we can think about stuff that we do want. Now, does that mean that we need to know how exactly we're going to get it? No, but that means we talk to people. We start taking steps. We put out there, we discuss what it is that we want. Again, wanting things, yes, is selfish from the standpoint of like, I want things for myself, but me wanting things for me does not mean that you cannot have what it is you want. It doesn't mean my wife can't have what she wants or my kids can't have what they want just because I want what I want. Like that is not true. That is another thought, and I think a bunch of crap that a lot of us have been fed for a very long time. So you don't have to buy into that. And instead, get really clear on what it is you want. What do you want to be 6 to 12 months from now? Have someone helping to support you and help you to get to that path where it is you want to be, and keep your focus on what it is you want, because Neuroscience is showing, science has proven, all of this has shown that really what we give our energy to, the thoughts that we give our energy to, literally create the reality around us, literally create our reality. It's also why you and I could look at the exact same subject and have completely different views of an event. We literally see two completely different things because you're in your world, I'm in mine. Yes, we're in the same physical space. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like going crazy here, right? Like we are in the same physical space. We're both human, but literally because our views are so very different of that exact same thing, because we have different thoughts, then literally we are living in completely different worlds. Worlds, my friend, that you and I have created over time. So keep your focus on what it is you want in life rather than what it is you don't. So that's a huge shift. Now, the question is, how do you know if you're thinking about something you want? Super easy. You feel good about it. Are the thoughts that you're thinking right now, if you're like, yeah, I want this, like, does it make you feel good? I can say, at least for me, maybe for you, when I'm thinking about the stuff I don't want in my life, like or stuff that I don't have, when I come from a view of lack, which is frankly very easy to get into, right? And again, it takes work to focus on what it is we want instead of what it is we don't want. So are you feeling good about those thoughts or are you not? Then once you have these thoughts and you start taking action on those thoughts, are those actions that you are taking a result, are they fun? Are they making you happy? Are you having a good time? Are you getting into that flow state? Do things just seem to be coincidentally happening in your life for you as you are moving forward and taking action, right? If they are, then you are absolutely in alignment and you are focused on what it is you want. And then finally, something that I heard actually earlier today, which was really great, was, it could be, so something could be work, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like work in the sense of like it's difficult, but it can be challenging. And I heard a definition that challenging is interesting plus fun. So are you moving towards something you want? Is it interesting? Yes. Is it fun? Yes. Is it interesting and fun, therefore challenging? Yes. Okay, great. You are moving towards what it is you want. So I'm going to leave you with a story of how one thought can really change everything. And that is, I was up in Maine on vacation with my family and my parents up in Maine. And for months, every time it seemed that every time my family would get into my car. So my wife and two daughters would get into our car. Our young one, Virginia, would cry. Like it seemed like she just hated going in the car. And I had this story up in my head that every time we get into the car, Virginia's going to cry. And I'm going to have a horrible time the entire time because I don't like crying and all this stuff. And so I literally started dreading every time we would go anywhere. I did not want to go anywhere. In fact, I was like becoming rather short about it. Anytime someone's like, hey, let's go. And then I'm like, well, is Virginia coming? Yes. Okay, great. I don't want to go because because the thought was because she's going to cry, I'm going to get upset and then I'm going to have a horrible time. Right. But I didn't realize at first that was the story, that every time we get in the car, Virginia's going to cry, until I sat down and took a look at it, because I was getting what I didn't want, which is that was happening. Every time we were getting in the car, Virginia was crying. I was probably taking actions because of the thoughts up in my head that was going to happen. And then that would happen. But I just got more of the same, more and more. And so literally almost every time we were getting in, she was crying. So there is something called The Work by Byron Katie. And the work is basically asking yourself some questions. And they're not difficult questions. And it goes like this. So you take a thought. So my thought was, every time we get Virginia in the car, she is going to cry and I am going to have a horrible time. So that's the thought, right? A very absolute. There's no black and white there. It is every freaking time we get in the car, Virginia's going to cry and I'm going to have a horrible time. So the first question that Byron Katie says we should ask ourselves is, well, are you 100% sure that that's true? Is it really every time we get in the car, Virginia cries? Is it 100% of the time, without fail? Is that true? And so I said, no, I don't think it's true. I don't think it's 100% of the time. It's like, okay, well then if it's not 100% true, then you just keep asking yourself, like, is this true? Is this true? Is this true? It's like, okay, so it's not true 100% of the time. Well, is it true that, if it is true, or if it's not true, rather, that Virginia is not going to cry or doesn't cry every time we get into the car, under what circumstances is it that she actually does not cry? And then I realized that, oh, well, sometimes when Palami, my older daughter, distracts her or my wife distracts her, then she doesn't cry, excuse me, when she gets in the car. So first, I open myself up to the possibility that what I'm thinking is not 100% true, right? Is it true? Is really the question. Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? So Virginia's going to cry 100% of the time. Is it true? No. Okay. Well, when does she not cry? When she's distracted. Okay. Well, if she doesn't cry when she's distracted, what can I do? And then I remembered that years ago when I had my web development business, we took a road trip, 3-week road trip. My wife and just our older daughter, who was our only daughter at the time, took a road trip. And during that road trip, because we were in the car for hours on end, and you can't have like a young kid in the car for hours on end, not go nuts. We had a little portable DVD player, and I literally memorized like all the Annie songs, Backyardigans, like all the stuff. I memorized all of that stuff because we heard it so much. But the thing is, it kept Palami happy. She actually learned a lot of colors and everything, which was awesome. And she didn't cry. So then I thought to myself, okay, well, if that worked for her, then maybe that will also work for Virginia, for now my youngest. So I immediately went online and I bought an iPad holder, stuck it. It arrived, thank God, like a day before we were about to leave. Stuck it on the back, downloaded a bunch of movies, like kid movies, for her to watch, loaded them up on the iPad. So then what we do, right, the next time we were getting ready to go anywhere, turned on a movie, put Virginia in her seat. She was watching a movie, happy, and literally like the trip back from Maine, which was, 2 long days because it's not a short drive, was heaven. She didn't cry whenever we got into the car because I distracted her with the movies. She had a great time. I had a great time. It was amazing. So that, just by merely asking the question, is that 100% true? Are you sure it's 100% true? Like, without a doubt, it is true. It is absolute truth with a capital T. No. Okay. Well, given that it's not 100% true, it's not truth with a capital T, what else, right? What else is possible? It opens up that possibility. And so that, though, taking the step back and applying that technique to it to change where we are. And literally, I went through this exercise. It took me like half an hour and realized all this stuff. And it literally turned everything around for me. And ever since then, I have never been upset. And it's been like 2 years, maybe. 2 years I've gone without being upset getting into the car with Virginia. It completely turned everything around, like literally changed my life. One thought. So one thought can take you into the depths of darkness where you really don't want to go, or one thought can also change your life and put you in a much happier place and actually move you forward to that future version of yourself, which is where you want to be. Neuroscience shows it. The 3 principles explain it. It is what I would really determine as truth as a capital T, my friends. So that's it. So I leave you with that story. And again, it's been great. I appreciate you staying part of your day with me here on this live stream or later watching the recorded video. Again, I'm Robert W. Dempsey at robertwdempsey.com. And if you are looking to turn your life around 180 degrees and get to that future self that you envision for yourself, to get what it is you really want to get and not worry about other people not getting what they want because of you getting what you want, then absolutely hit me up and let's have a conversation. Thank you, my friends. It's been fantastic. Have a great rest of your day.